Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Beer Guys.
Everything sequel contains explicit language. And why the fudge not, you melon farmer?
My name is Michael Shantz, and joining me in this pugilistic affair, the man who'd better get his rankings right or I'll fustigate him, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Hi, Tom.
Condominiums. I never use them. I just want to say off the bat,
That line really made me laugh out loud.
that's what I wanted to say off the bat, that within the frame of this character, Rocky Balboa, Sly Stallone writes, directs, and executes comedy perfectly.
Yes.
I know that, like, on the How Dare You podcast, you know, you've watched some movies that have caused you to question his comedic abilities, and
Well, and in general,
we'll have that here too. But
yeah,
when applied to Rocky Balboa, he nails the comedy. I have complete
every
confidence
time
in his ability. Maybe not every time, but enough times for it
So
to be
close,
the
though.
exception rather than the rule.
The joke hit rate
Oh.
is out of control in the series.
Yeah, and specifically, they're not jokes; they're gaffes, which is what which is
right.
what works about them. The only time it ever goes wrong is when Rocky himself is supposed to understand the joke. Whenever they do that, it fails, and whenever Rocky has no knowledge that what he's saying is a joke, it succeeds.
It's gold.
It's a very simple formula, but it's one that he manages to carry over 6 movies to impeccable effect.
Yes, agreed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. I don't know about you, Tom, but we've been doing this over a year.
Yes.
And for a year, I've been wondering, when are we going to do Rocky?
Yeah.
And here we are.
We're really treating ourselves.
Oh, we are.
I mean,
we really, really are. And
I don't know. I think we should do like the sort of the Air Buddy series next or something, just to sort of just to balance things out a little bit, because
right.
we have been indulging in some of the finest film series that exist out there.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Also, I gotta tell you,
But this is. But I guess I've justified it to myself, and I'll let you do the same. That this is very timely, since there is a in air quotes new Rocky movie out in theaters.
correct. And we are. By the time you are hearing this, we will be almost exactly. I'm not sure of the dates yet, but we're going to be close to the Rocky IV episode.
That's right.
Coming out around a 1-year anniversary of us talking about
That's right.
Sylvester Stallone recutting Rocky IV.
And that movie has now been released, and we've both seen it, and we'll talk about it when we talk about Rocky IV.
Together.
We saw, yeah,
I mean, we saw it together.
We physically
of course
saw
we're going to
it
talk
together.
about it together.
Yeah, it was our annual get together, our first ever field trip, and we have some fascinating insights.
Oh yeah.
And it's really interesting. I'm normally very down on director's cuts, and you know I'll reserve judgment until we get to the episode
Till
itself.
we get there.
And I also don't really know what I think about it yet. But I will say
I think I do.
But it's interesting because my initial reaction once the director's cut had finished was, that's all great. Can we put all that back in Rocky IV now?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. That's exactly what I thought that movie needed, because I don't think there's anything wrong with Rocky IV.
Yeah.
In the way that he does, apparently, but
Yeah, I was gonna say he's probably gonna do more Rocky IV bash. He probably does more Rocky IV bashing than we will do when we talk about Rocky IV.
let me tell you, my friend. I mean, that leads you because that leads me to my sort of existential crisis for this episode, like for the ranking. So here's what I want to ask you. Like, when you think about ranking, when you think about good and bad,
Yeah.
are you judging these movies as like just films, standalone movies, or as sequels?
Well, historically, I've tended to think about them more as sequels when I'm ranking,
Uh-huh.
and more about them as individual movies
For good,
when
bad?
I'm doing good or bad. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the division in my head, but I'm totally with you. I thought more about that question doing this series than perhaps any other.
Yeah, it just presented itself like in full display, especially with my top two movies, because I wrestled with
Yeah.
this quite a bit for those top two movies. And
Yeah.
so I really had to think about what I value, because I think I understand what I've said I value in the past,
Yeah.
but it butted up against what I'm loving about this series.
Yeah, that's it. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity that this podcast has provided to think about this series in a different way, because I've always thought about the Rocky franchise holistically. You know, I just think of it as a strong film series, perhaps one of the strongest that Hollywood's ever done, but I've never sat down and thought, you know, which of these movies is good or bad.
Right.
Which movie outperforms the other. Like I've never had that before.
It's more an entity.
Yeah. And, you know, frankly, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this, you know, I'm not particularly inclined to think critically and evaluatively about Sylvester Stallone's filmmaking.
Right, yeah.
We're both fans, and
we're in the bag.
We forgive a lot of his mistakes.
Yeah.
And you know, once you get into the Rocky movies, you realize that, you know, you have to put a lot of Stalloneisms to one side if you're trying to answer questions like, is this a good or a bad movie? Right? Aside from the fact that this is, you know, his most successfully feel-good series, there are times in these movies that, you know, they're so deliberate in trying to make you feel good that you get swept along with that wave. And you have to remind yourself that you're supposed to be, you know, you're supposed to be evaluating, not just enjoying.
Yeah, for our purposes.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, where does that leave us?
Well, I mean, you know, I'll throw the question you usually ask me back at you. Did you find this easy or hard?
It was difficult.
Yeah.
And I
enjoyed the process of doing it. I think because I just never thought about this series in these terms before.
Exactly, right. Like I said, like you referenced, and like I was saying, it's more of the series is more of an entity in total. That you just broad stroke.
Yeah.
As opposed to like breaking it down and looking at every individual film.
Right.
And
part of that is, you know, like I you know, often see these movies as part of a marathon on TV. And so,
but that goes to it because it's like which ones you see the most too.
And then so I'm not necessarily think about individual films, because to me an individual film in this series is about 3/4 of Rocky 3 and about 1/3 of Rocky 4. Just because of where I catch it when it's on TV.
Yeah.
You know? And for some reason it's always those two movies, and then Rocky 5 comes on and I turn it off.
For good reason.
No, actually the TV turns itself off, which has never happened before or since.
Well,
not that I'm tipping my hand.
I was going to say, I'll go ahead and crawl out on the thin part of the branch to say decisions about Rocky 5 were not difficult.
Yeah. I think, I think we all knew that was a possibility.
But I think what's funny is, like, I was still kind of rooting for Rocky 5. Like, I was like, it's not like I remember.
Oh, I want it to be better than it is.
Yeah.
But you know, you got the card that you dealt.
Yeah, exactly.
A card laid is a card played, you know?
Because you also talked about, you know, how strong a series it is as a whole.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's and I'm with you completely. I think there's one outlier.
Yes.
That being Rocky 5, but the series itself is very strong.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the general consensus with the public? Or even critics, or, you know, one or the other? Because I'm not sure. I don't know if everybody thinks the way we do. But...
No,
but they're wrong and we're right.
Well, I mean, you know, we're always right because, you know, we've been led in.
Did you say we're always right?
Well, we're always gonna because we know something that the general public doesn't know from doing this podcast, which is that sequels have, you know, always automatically have more value than you think they do, and should never be written off. However, you know, it's. I think probably people think there's a huge drop off from the original Rocky.
Right. Yeah.
Which is not the case, and I think you have to adjust your expectations pretty much every time you start a new movie.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting because these movies also want to be seen as one continuous.
Do you mean that in general or
line.
with this series specifically?
Yeah. But at the same time, this is a series that's incredibly good at adjusting your expectations at the beginning of every movie, so you know exactly what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Setting different generic and stylistic expectations every time. So it's like, what's the big deal? You know, you're watching a different kind of movie, but you know you are. So.
But it's interesting because
that
with
kind
this
of cancels out the problem for me.
And
but, you know, a possible problem, and that's why I think, you know, I'll say now, I find it a lot easier to label these movies good or bad than I do in ranking them.
Oh yeah, me too.
Because I know what these movies are trying to do, because they're so upfront about telling us what they're trying to do, and I'm evaluating them on that criteria. Not based on, but when you have to compare it to other movies in the series, you have to you weirdly have to think about good or bad a lot more in terms of quality.
Yes.
Than you do about is this a good version of this movie?
Well, and to your earlier point, talking about the ones you see the most, or the ones you grew up with, because you tend to gravitate towards those, and so there are ones that I've seen a lot more of that you think would influence my decisions, but there are some surprises for me.
Right, some surprises for me as well. I'm your, you know, that we don't have a lot of objectivity here, but I'm your, but I will be your nostalgia control experiment, because I think I've said this before. I have only seen Stallone films as an adult male, so I have no nostalgia attached to any of them.
That's bizarre to me. I don't even understand it.
Yeah, but it means that. But what it means is,
what a sad British boy you must have been.
I am able to validate what you're saying,
right?
In a way that might actually mean something, because, you know, if you're like, well, it's, you know, it's just my nostalgia because I saw these movies when I came out. I'm like, no, I enjoy, you know, these movies as someone who has absolutely no childhood attachment to them.
Yeah. And
only appreciates, you know, Sylvester Stallone as a quote discerning adult, end quote. And let's leave that to one side for a moment. But certainly, I mean, that's got to count for something. So, you know, I might be more of a hype man for you than anything else here.
I understand.
because I don't want you second guessing yourself on the nostalgia.
No, I guess it's not that, but like you have to wonder because there might be obvious glaring problems to the general public for some of these movies, but I'm here to say no. And even Stallone himself. I mean, obviously we're going to talk about, when we talk about Rocky IV, we're going to talk about this director's cut.
Yes.
But as we've already kind of stated, look, we've said there's a lot of good stuff in that movie, in this recut.
Yes.
But for the most part, like, put that stuff back into the original version.
Yeah. I mean, we're always going to be, well, I think we're always going to be pro theatrical release on this podcast.
Yeah.
Over director's cut. But you know, it's a worthy director's cut, and it's interesting. It gives us a sense of where Stallone's head is as a director now, which is helpful for thinking about Rocky Balboa. You know, which is 2006, one of his most recent movies.
Right.
And the director's cut really chimes with that more than the movies he made in the 80s.
Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah.
that's how it's helpful for at least a couple of these movies.
The 80s movies are 80s movies.
Right, as they should be.
Yeah. Exactly.
as God intended.
I wish he knew that, though.
Yeah. Well, you know, he's someone who can't leave his own work alone.
That's true.
We've said this before.
We've said it before.
With regards
yeah.
to Rambo. You know, there's a time to sort of back away and recognize what you've done, and I just don't think he has that in his makeup.
Yeah, it's not in his DNA.
No, not at all.
All right.
I mean, even in that interview that we saw during the screening event,
right,
he was already pitching a Rocky TV series to Ben Mankiewicz, who,
right,
as I remember, did not ask, "What's your pitch for a Rocky TV series?" at any point, right? I don't remember that being one of the questions, and yet
it came up.
and yet that was Stallone's response. So he's always thinking 12 steps ahead of the next iteration of his franchises.
Right. That was his response for "What are you getting for dinner tonight?"
Do you like Philadelphia?
Yeah.
I think was the question. And he says,
so much
yeah,
so, let me tell
it'd
you.
be great, but it would be great. Like, I'm young, and Apollo Creed comes down the street. I'm like, hey, yeah, he's good. Fascinating man.
Oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Tom, I'm kind of chomping at the bit here.
Yeah. Is that a boxing term?
No.
Oh, what's the bit then?
Isn't that for horses?
Okay.
He is a horseman.
What's the thing they put in their mouths?
I think it might be the bit.
Oh, there you go. So it is a boxing term. No, not horses, boxers.
Oh, no, that's just a mouthpiece.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're chomping at the mouthpiece.
Chomping at the mouthpiece.
There we go. We'll work together on the boxing.
I actually have
metaphors.
vivid memories of that from playing Pop Warner football. It's not like the boxing ones; they're like the plastic ones, and you had to dip them in boiling hot water.
Oh.
And then put them in your mouth, and then bite down, and you'd be like, because it would be hot.
Wow.
Yeah.
And just, you will be my you'll be my boxing consultant for this, because I know literally nothing about boxing other than what I've seen in boxing movies.
Yeah, I mean, all of these movies have.
This series has a lot of real boxing history.
Yeah, all of these movies have references to actual fights and
right.
He kind of, picks and chooses different things from different fights, and I think I see the most in Rocky III from at least 3 or 4 different fights, but
interesting.
They all these movies take from real life ideas or stories.
And it in general, I'd say that there's a really great fit between a boxer's career and an ongoing film series. Like they meld together really well because you've got the first fight followed by the rematch, and that, so it seems to lend itself to the pattern of a boxer's career seems to lend itself to the idea of a film franchise.
Yeah.
Because there's so many comebacks and
Right.
rematches.
It's funny because it's like it takes the first two movies to get Rocky to a specific place, and then both of those things, like 2 movies worth of shit, happens just in Rocky 3.
Yeah.
You know?
Huh, interesting. Yeah.
So, but it's like the idea of how cyclical a boxer's kind of
Yeah.
year or career can be, in which you'll fight the same guy, you take on a new enemy,
Yeah. Right.
you win, you lose, like all of that's present throughout the series.
Yeah, I think so.
All right. I am dying to know which Rocky sequel is at the top of your list.
Okay. You ready?
I am.
Okay. All right. Top of my list is Rocky Balboa.
Oh! Really?
Really? Yeah, I know.
Okay. I
You
did
didn't
not think
expect
you'd
that?
go that way.
No. Well, I had no sense that I would.
Really?
Necessarily. Yeah.
Wait, had you seen it before?
Yeah, I'd seen it before, but
Okay.
not as many times as the others. I think I was always resistant to being as impressed with it as I am. Because, it's hands down the most ludicrous concept in the series.
Well,
and
yeah.
this is a series that includes Rocky 4. Okay. But it's
I don't know that it's as outlandish as you think.
No, it is. But
it's based on a precedent, though. It's something that actually happened. You're talking about
film tells us, yes.
You're talking about the video game.
But I think there's a few things that don't stand up to
oh yeah, obviously.
To sort of realist scrutiny.
Of course.
But it's just
that brain damage thing. Forget about it.
Right. But yeah, I think it's the best movie in the series.
That's okay.
The best sequel in the series, and Stallone is a painter, and he very much paints this movie. I think
he is a far more accomplished director.
Yeah.
By the time he gets to Rocky Balboa.
That's true, and I mean, I think he's a very even by Rocky 2 and 3, he's sort of become a very accomplished filmmaker technically.
Yes.
But what we see here is a kind of,
and he kind of has his finger on the pulse, I think.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Of that time, yeah.
Quite literally on the pulse.
Yeah.
Of what's happening historically in media, but when you get to Rocky Balboa, you see a kind of an emotional and stylistic maturity.
Thoughtful.
That shows real growth.
Yeah.
But it also understands what it is, which is a boxing movie and a Rocky movie.
Yeah.
And it was quite deliberately made as an apology for Rocky 5. And
which was warranted.
But, often, we know this in film series, often the apology is worse than the offense.
True.
Sometimes.
Yeah, that can happen.
This really does. But this really actually counteracts the harm that Rocky 5 did to the series.
Yes. But interestingly, it doesn't ignore it.
No, but that's part of the part of the apology is say, yeah, this could work, but it didn't.
Yeah.
And now it does.
Right.
which is just another layer of how remarkable a movie this is.
Well,
which is why it's at the top of the list.
I'm impressed.
Thank you.
Because you have a penchant for, dare I say, getting the top of your list wrong. But
wow. Okay. You're not pulling your punches here.
I'm just saying, you went Superman 3 first.
I did.
Over Superman 2.
Yes.
And
yeah. I mean, I'm not I think
I'm just saying. So
that's a fairly controversial opinion, though. It sounds like you're sympathetic to it, but I'm gonna say a lot of people I think would be shocked that what many people thought as a kind of cheesy, cliched afterthought is the best film in the series.
Wait, what are we talking about? Superman?
No, I'm talking about Rocky Balboa.
Okay.
I mean, I've heard that opinion about it. So
no, well,
I don't think by any means there's
a
consensus around this being the best in the series.
Wait, say it again?
I don't think there's a consensus that this is a high point in the series.
And yet, all right, you have said several times this is the best movie of the sequels.
Of the sequels, yeah.
What I wrestled with, going back to my essential question, best movie, best sequel.
Yeah.
Tom, I had to wrestle my soul to the ground because I almost went another way, but I, like you, have Rocky Balboa at the top of my list.
That's great.
It is the best movie. It really is.
And I think it's the best. I think it's the best sequel because. Well, no, I can say that it's the top of my list. I think it's the best sequel because the best sequel and the best movie because what it does count to, like.
I mean, I get what you're saying.
Answer for the previous movie.
Yeah.
Without excluding the previous movie.
I have discounted it as a sequel compared to as a standalone movie, but I don't think that's fair. I think you're right. I think it is it not only is it a really great movie, it's a great sequel.
Yeah.
But I guess the thing that I wrestle with is because I mean, you gravitate towards the batshit craziness of some sequels. So that's what I was talking about because I seem to.
There's a lot of batshit craziness in here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, probably having it has the flavor of bullshit without the content.
Well, I mean, should I go next? Because that leads me to what I wrestled with because.
Okay.
And it's like there's just a part of me that feels like what I've done is so wrong, but I cannot apologize for it, even though I feel like I should. But second on my list, and I swear, Tom, so close to the top of my list, is Rocky IV.
Oh, okay.
I fucking love that movie.
All right. I mean, that's
like as a sequel
higher than I thought it would be on your list, but I had an inkling of this. In sitting with you.
Based on an experience, theater, maybe?
In sitting with you in a movie theater. Even before the movie had started. Because, obviously with the director's cut taking a lot of the things that you obviously love about Rocky IV out of it, I think, there was a mixed reaction during it. But prior to that, you were whooping it up like a audience member of the Arsenio Hall show. Hands in the air, cheerleader
Dog
style.
Pound? Dog House? I forget.
Yeah. So, and when when Ben Mankiewicz and Sylvester Stallone started talking about how 80s the original Rocky 4 was, you said at full volume in the movie theater, that's what we like about it.
That's what works.
Yeah,
I'm not wrong.
so I had an inkling that I was like, oh, well, maybe this is going to be pretty high on Mike's list.
I had a feeling that
But
maybe
you know
I was.
what? I think, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to give you any shit about any of this, but I don't.
That
have
movie's
a problem with that,
30%.
and nor should you.
That movie's 30% music montage, though. I want to be clear about what
And it's a 90-minute movie.
Yeah, about what I'm putting at the top of almost the top of my list. And like I said,
Right.
it's almost at the top of my list. I'm a
Be
crazy
interesting
person.
to see where you go on good or bad after this.
I had a feeling that you knew you might have sussed out how in the bag for Rocky IV I was.
Not second though, and not as a contender for top slot.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, that is, it's not, it's no heavyweight champion, right? It's a contender, but it's no champion. It doesn't have that fast, greasy speed.
It's Jerry
need.
Cooney.
I assume you're correct.
Yeah, exactly.
In that reference.
Yeah. I've talked about Jerry Cooney before. I think I talked about him when we had Matt Aldrich on.
Oh.
He was like this old white guy that like Larry Holmes and all these guys would kind of beat up.
I only listen when I'm speaking on this podcast.
Understood.
When there's two of you in the room, I'm like, just let him get on with it.
All right, smart guy.
Secret smart guy.
Secret smart guy. You
like,
tell
like
me
Stallone himself.
what your second favorite of the series is.
Well, this was a revelation to me, I think, and the biggest surprise for me.
Rocky IV.
The second on my list is the second film in this series.
Hey.
Two.
All right.
I
You
think
said it was a surprise.
it was a surprise.
Yeah, because that's the movie I've seen the least.
It's interesting. I'm not sure I've seen it much less than the others, but I always thought of it as a little bit more nondescript and more remakey than the others.
Mm-hmm.
Like it much.
You mean
more
like
of a-
carbon copy of the first?
Yeah, which is not actually.
It's not
the
true, though.
case. It's not true. It was kind of it was an impression of the movie that I had in the back of my mind, but I actually realized in watching it this time, and obviously this podcast has a lot to do with that it's one of the best examples I've ever seen of the Aftermath sequel.
Mm-hmm.
And we've recently done the Halloween series,
Right.
and Halloween 2 does some great work in that regard, but
Sure.
this is even better than that.
Mm-hmm.
Where the Aftermath sequel being, a movie where everything that happens is a consequence of something that happens in the previous movie, and you pick up directly after it.
Right.
But it's also remarkable because it's a totally different experience from the original Rocky. It's softer, it's more romantic, and yet it still understands the kind of working class roots that the series comes from.
Well, it certainly more deftly handles everything that thematically they're going for.
Yeah.
That they're also kind of doing in Rocky V. Except going in opposite directions.
Without John G. Avildsen.
Right. Because it's not the first movie he directed, but it's only the second movie Sylvester Stallone ever directed.
And that's another
That's another
Um,
plus in its column.
That's another tick in the column.
Yeah.
Frankly, it's one of the best sequels I've ever seen.
You think?
Yeah.
Well, because I like you. This was my biggest surprise in the series as well. And I still struggled in my next two movies.
Doesn't seem right, does it? But
yeah, exactly.
the proof is in the pudding, as
Yeah.
they say.
I don't even know how to put it. Frankly, I was astounded when I watched Rocky 2. I had not seen Rocky 2 maybe in 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's the sequel I remembered the least. I probably had not seen it more than 5 or 6 times total in my life, whereas Rocky 3 and 4,
Well, also,
I might have seen them 50 to 100 times.
Imagistically, it's so close to the original that you could
Right.
you could kind of merge the two fairly easily.
Mm-hmm.
Stallone looks the same. He has the same face in both movies.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't,
Everything looks the same, you know.
he doesn't become a different person.
He hasn't become an entire.
He doesn't become a different person until Rocky 3.
You know, it's you know, like exactly, it's an aftermath sequel. It's what happens now to Rocky and Apollo,
Yeah.
based on what they both experienced at the end of the last movie.
Right. Well, it's
the only thing, you know, it's second on my list. You know, you say, well, why is the best one of the best sequels you've ever seen? Why isn't it at the top of your list? And I think it's just because, you know, Rocky Balboa to me is more of a coup because it is such a belated sequel.
Yeah.
That it seemed less likely that you could pull off that kind of magic
With a
Then
60 to 65-year-old boxer.
Yeah, and you know, on closer inspection, you kind of you expect a movie made 3 years after the original with the same cast,
Right.
who all kind of look the same, with a lot of the same creatives, to sort of, you know, to have a better chance of hitting those heights again.
Mm-hmm.
And that is literally the only reason why it's second on my list.
All right. I can't disagree. I cannot castigate you.
Or fustigate.
Exactly. Did I say? Because that was my biggest surprise in the series, and it is third on my list.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
I assume so. I assume that was the case when you said that.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Interesting. You really do love Rocky 4, don't you?
I do.
Yeah. It's like a.
I don't know how anybody can't.
It's like, I tell you what it's like. It's like a bad woman
Careful.
who gets in the way of good relationships.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's like the relationship you keep going back to, even though you know it's doomed to failure. Anyway.
Just because it's the most ridiculous doesn't make it any less successful.
No, not when it's a celebration of ridiculousness.
Yes. Thank
If
you.
it was insecure about its own ridiculousness, then it would be a less successful movie.
I'm glad we're on the same page.
I said successful. I have not yet said good or bad. Or where it lands in my list.
That's what I want to know now.
Yeah.
I mean, by declaring our next movies, well, can I safely assume we're both putting Rocky 5 at the bottom?
Yeah.
Whew.
I think,
All right.
afraid so.
So sanity is restored.
Yeah.
I never know with you, but
Yeah.
but
I'm
based on
not that much of a loose cannon.
I don't know. I mean, I guess I do. Maybe I'm wrong. I have this idea of you as a loose cannon, but we agree a lot.
Clearly.
We agree fairly often.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm more generous towards movies that are successful on their own terms.
That's true.
But
Batman and Robin.
Rocky 5 sets out its terms very clearly, but it fails to abide by those terms. So it goes straight to the bottom of the pile. Which is
I imagine that nobody would be surprised by that based on how we were conversing towards the beginning of this podcast.
Yeah.
It seems like we
I
let that
mean,
out of the bag.
in that interview we saw, the Rocky IV director's cut, all that Stallone said about Rocky V was Rocky V didn't work.
Didn't work.
And for
He
a
just
man
said,
of his
look,
for a man
it
of his
didn't
ego
work.
to say that,
Yeah.
you know it's a clunker.
Yeah.
But what makes it worse for me is that I actually think the direction that they go in Rocky V is absolutely where the series should go. But they do it in such a hollow and artificial way.
Yeah.
They miss all their marks, and it ends up eating away at the realism that it's trying to
instill
create in the series.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a worse crime is that it undoes its own formula, which is, just, you might as well not make the film at all at that point.
Yeah. It's not a boxing movie.
No, there's no boxing in it, really.
There's no boxing.
There's no Rocky doesn't box
Yeah.
in it, except in the clips from other movies, which is kind of rubbing it in.
Right.
You know?
It's extra cruel.
Yeah. There used to be a game show in Britain, a darts-based game show called Bullseye, and they had a shtick at the end of every episode. Well, not at the end of every episode. If someone didn't win the grand prize at the end, they would show them what it was going to be, and the host Jim Bowen would say, "Let's have a look at what you would have won." And they bring it on. It was usually a speedboat as well, like it was a. It was an 80s, so it was lots of 80s style grand prizes. They would bring on the speedboat
so that they could go to
leave it on the stage for a second and then take it off. Like two stagehands going, "You'll never see that again."
Oh wow! They let them know the Miami Vice life that they could have had.
But as the comedian Peter Kay once said, two guys from 200 miles from sea, what are they going to do with a speedboat?
Right. Sell it.
Anyway, I don't know why. Well, I guess, you're bringing boxing to this. I'm bringing my knowledge of TV darts. We're both coming at this from different angles.
For the benefit of our audience.
I guess so.
They can benefit.
Why not?
They can benefit from your wisdom. Don't sell yourself short, sir.
Okay, what's next?
So we have both our 1s, 2s, and 5s.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, we've got your 1, 2, and 3. So it must be me next.
Oh shit! So I have officially declared.
You've officially. It's like a game of Connect 4 you just did.
I did, yeah. I was like, hey, look at that, I won.
it's like you didn't see that, I had 3
right
from the end and you couldn't get to me. Okay, so yeah, I've got 2 to declare now.
Yeah. So my 4th in the series, and this my brother's gonna be upset, but my 4th in the series is Rocky 3.
Yes.
But again, these are all 2 through 4 are close.
Yeah.
I might feel different on any other day. Probably not, but I could.
Well, I'll say that the
what am I saying? Because I have Rocky 4 very close to my top, so
yeah.
I don't.
Well, I'll let it go then that Rocky 3 is the 3rd on my list.
Tom.
What?
I mean, you're not wrong, but Rocky 4 is so low.
Well, it's I actually thought it was going to be higher in my list than it was. Again, my going into the series, the impression I had was this is going to be top or second. Um, it didn't end up being that way, and I think, obviously by this point in his career, Sylvester Stallone is becoming very slick and accomplished as a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
But what this movie lacked for me, at least on this viewing, was a sense of those pleasingly rough edges that Rocky Balboa and Rocky 2, and of course the original, have.
Well, even Rocky 3, despite the fact that it's a early 80s movie, it has some 70s flair. It has, at times, it looks a little grainier. It looks a little...
Yeah.
So it is an 80s movie, but
Yeah.
it's kind of like stepping a toe in both decades.
But I mean, it's but the reason it's like right in the middle is because it works so well as cinematic entertainment.
Yes.
Specifically a wrestling movie, which is what it is.
It really is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And not just because it has a wrestling match in it.
Well, that's what sets the tone for us as viewers.
Yeah, but it's like, because it's got a heightened wrestling type.
Yeah.
Well, two.
Yeah. It's very deliberate. That's what
wrestling
I realized
type
on this,
villains,
Yeah. It's the screenplay is a kind of wrestling scenario writ large.
Yes. You're right. Yeah.
So
wow,
that leaves, now I've slotted my counter into the empty space. Rocky 4.
Oh, Rocky 4.
And I actually
my Rocky 4 is looking down at your Rocky 4 like, what's up? Why are you all the way down there?
So I must be the ultimate director's cut then. I'm just the negative in the salt mine that's kind of like crumbling away. Well, and I'm gonna say, like, thinking about this, there's no reason why it's particularly in this slot, except because this is what I mean about the ranking being harder than the good or bad. Because I know how I feel about Rocky 4, but because of the other movies in the series, it has to be second to last. But I will add, Rocky 4 is the basement. Okay? Rocky 5 is in hell.
Yeah.
Let's not try and pretend that these films are in any way comparable.
Right.
Okay? So that's all I want to add. And there's no particular reason why, it's outperformed by the other movies, but not in a crazily significant way for what it is.
Okay. I get
outmaneuvered is a better way of looking.
I get everything that you're saying.
Yeah. It's just it's like there's a touch here, a touch there, which I prefer.
I think the thing for me about Rocky 4 that is completely remarkable is, based on how ridiculous it is, how much it should not work, it is remarkable that it works as well as it does. It is a magic trick. He is super secret smart guy.
Yeah.
Master magician.
Super secret smart spy. In this case.
Yes, exactly.
He's sent into Russia to win the Cold War.
Taken down
Spoiler
Russia
alert.
from within.
Spoiler alert. He wins the Cold War.
He wins the Cold War on heart.
But I don't know. I mean, let's talk good or bad. But I might have some issues with what you just said.
What?
Again, I'm your control experiment because you're second guessing yourself. You're doing what Stallone is doing now and saying, "Oh, this shouldn't work as well as it does." I don't know if I feel that way. I think this.
Oh, you mean like the design of it was?
Yeah, this should work well because it's designed a certain way. It's designed to succeed because of
okay,
because
but what
of how the film is made.
But Tom, what I'm saying is, when Stallone sat down at his legal pad and wrote at the top, Rocky wins the Cold War,
Right.
that's a recipe for disaster. And
well, you
it
could say the
wasn't.
same about Rocky Balboa, though. You know, the first, like...
No, yeah,
you know,
you're right. You're right.
At the top of his legal pad is the words virtual reality. I mean... what does that mean?
Agreed.
And he produces a beautiful expressionist
And that's
movie.
why it's at the top of my list, because not only, like, winning the Cold War is a little more ridiculous to me, but...
But it's a propaganda movie.
Yeah, no, you're right.
That's what
Yes,
I mean.
it absolutely is. But both of those movies, that's what's remarkable, is that both of those movies start off with ridiculous ideas, and he turns both movies into one I think is a great movie and one a really good movie.
Yeah. It's like if you went to see Triumph of the Will and they were ambivalent about Hitler. It's not going to work, is it?
All right. All right, we got to do good bad.
All right, now that you're voicing support for Hitler, let's move on.
Let's move on.
That's what I heard from that last link.
Send your letters to just Tom Stewart at everythingsequel@gmail.com.
Well, you're going to read that too, so you just fucked yourself.
All right, sir. Do we both... I think we both agree that Rocky V is a bad movie. Yes?
Yeah, it's a terrible movie.
Okay.
I feel personally betrayed by it.
Yeah, me too.
I always expect it to be better than
I
it
was... I remember seeing that movie in the theater and being shell-shocked
Yeah.
at how bad it
Interesting.
was.
And it chimes pretty much with what we've already observed about John G. Avildsen as a sequel director. He has such a narrow view of what a sequel can be.
Karate Kids.
And he sort of, from the Karate Kid movies that we did.
Yeah.
And he imprints that philosophy on this movie at exactly the wrong point.
Yeah.
To its ruin.
We are on the same page.
Yeah.
So my question for you, I suppose, do you want to go one by one? Or can I...
I don't think there's any need.
Are there blanket statements to be made, perhaps?
That seems a little gratuitous.
Are any of these other movies bad?
The only one that comes close for me...
I know what
No, you know what? I'm not even going to say that.
Good.
No.
They're all good, Tom.
Yeah, but they're good in a specific way, which is that...
But still good.
Yes, don't worry. But is that they're successful in what they're trying to do, and what they're trying to do is so clear from the outset of all of them. Well, I'm talking specifically here about Rocky 3 and 4.
Yes.
Which, I guess, in, the real world, more people would have problems with us calling them good movies.
Right.
2 and Balboa, you could make quality arguments based on...
Just what's on screen.
Just what's on...
Our basic knowledge of what works on film.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Rocky 3 and 4, it's like, first you have to understand it as a wrestling movie, but the movie gives you an opportunity to understand it as a wrestling movie before it becomes a wrestling movie.
Mm-hmm. It
excels at that. Likewise, Rocky 4 it's a science fiction, fantasy, revenge propaganda movie.
And on those terms, it works magnificently well.
And, it comes out of the gate telling you that's what it is.
Yeah.
And it's, so when I'm watching it, I think, would this make sense in Star Trek II Wrath of Khan? Yes? Okay, then it's fine for this movie. So that's it.
That's
my... And both of them are thoroughly entertaining movies, and in a way, I think Rocky 3 is the most politically problematic of them all, which again seems counterintuitive given that
It is.
Rocky 4 is actual propaganda.
No, but you're...
Because it's framed as that, I find it less problematic than the actual politics in Rocky 3.
The actual politics of Rocky 3 are a problem. I tell you who's going to be none too pleased with our lists and our declarations.
Mr. T?
One Mr. Matthew Aldrich.
Oh. Mr. M.A.
Well, Rocky 3 is a 1982 movie. And
yes, it is.
So for the 1982 project, he had lots to say about Rocky 3. Not a fan.
Oh, okay.
And I obviously we're going to talk about it when we talk about it, but what's that?
You've already gone 10 rounds on Rocky
I have,
3.
yeah.
Yeah.
And he actually, I'll give him this. He's part of the reason I think Rocky 3 fell below some of these other movies for me. I hadn't seen it in a while, and when I watched it for that podcast, I noticed some things that I'd never really paid attention to before, and they're glaring and obvious. And but
this is why it sucks to talk to screenwriters about things.
I know, but also I think we're going to talk about it when we talk about it. But race is at issue in that movie, but it's also brought up in the movie.
Well, yeah, I think there's the whole idea.
It has problems.
Yeah,
I'll say definitively.
The whole idea of this series has a kind of unconscious racism about it.
Yeah.
The whole idea of the Great White Hope and trying to put prominent black people in society back in their place is a kind of unfortunate byproduct.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
But Rocky 3 seems to have, to me, the most uncomfortably conscious racism of all of these series.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're absolutely right. It's not without its complications and qualifications, and we do need to focus on that too.
Yeah.
But it suffers because of that more than Rocky 4 because you know how fiercely jingoistic it's going to be from the first frame of the movie.
From minute one, yeah.
So I suppose
as the gloves rise.
I suppose if Rocky 3 sort of began like with the titles being the face of Reagan, you'd go, oh,
I get it.
Yeah. You'd be like, okay, yeah. Anything you show me now cannot be as racist as I think it is.
That's funny. All right. Well, I think we did it.
I think we did too. It's very exciting. We've got a lot
to talk about with this series. Yeah. It's very exciting.
It is.
We are treating ourselves. I mean, really.
Yeah.
We might have already said it, but this is boy, are we happy boys right now.
And yet Rocky 5.
Yeah, well, I hate to say something as cliche as it is what it is, but it is.
It's like that. This is such an elitist analogy, and I apologize, but it's like when you have a tasting menu, and there's like one course that doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
But like doesn't work to the point that it ruins the what is before and after it.
Yeah.
Like it's like someone stuck a dog turd in between like a game hen and a
yeah, you're like
and a
so
flambe.
Course 4 is a cheddar cheese cranberry marshmallow trout? Well, give it a whirl.
I got it. I'm gonna have to. I am gonna have to call you on that. If there's any movie in this series that is that menu item, it's Rocky 4. Because the elements of what you described are delicious.
Fuck you.
It is served on a bed of music montage.
It's fucking great. You're not wrong.
All right.
But it still works.
Yeah.
All right,
So-
ladies and gentlemen, if
Get ready for round 1.
yeah, like get ready. Tom and
Round 2?
I have got our gloves on. We're taped up. The bits are in. Sorry,
The
Tom.
mouthpieces are in. We're a couple of horses about to get into the ring.
The metaphors are starting to get unwieldy. Woo! All right, you got to let us know. I really, Tom, I want to know,
Yeah.
how does the public rank these Rocky movies? Tell us your top, your bottom, what's in between. Are they good? Are they bad? Find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Send us an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Shantz here of
Pace
the How
yourself.
Dare You
We gotta go the
Awards.
distance.
I'm so-
We gotta go the distance on
like,
this one.
Let's go. Round 1 in the books. Say goodbye, Tom.
Ice is stupid. People standing on ice is more stupid. I've been working on. I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe 2 craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.